So I literally just got a comment a few minutes ago saying, hey, should you actually go to basic training in AIT before enrolling in ROTC? Do I think that's a good idea or a bad idea? And I was like, hey, I was replying to the comment and I was like, you know what? I should make a video on this because that is exactly what I did. So let's say you're in the position right now where you're thinking about being an officer and maybe doing the whole ROTC route, and you're faced with a decision. I've made all these videos about being enlisted before being an officer and everything, and you're thinking to yourself, is it really beneficial? Is it a good thing to actually go the enlisted route, go to basic training in AIT before going back and doing ROTC to be an officer? Is that a good idea? Well, for me, I'm going to say that number one, the good idea, bad idea thing is kind of just depending on you and like how you value certain things. And there's different routes that you can take in the whole enlisting. So you can enlist, do split ops, go to just basic training, and then do ROTC. So that's one option that you can do. Another option is what I did, which is I enlisted into the military knowing that I wanted to take ROTC. I had spoken with the ROTC recruiter or whatever beforehand, made sure that I was going to actually be able to enroll in ROTC, which obviously you can. I've talked about that before. I thought it was much more difficult, but yes, you can enroll in ROTC. The only problem is making sure that you can get a contracted spot. But anyways, I knew that I wanted to be in ROTC. I knew that I wanted to be an officer, but I still chose to enlist, go to basic training, go to AIT. That whole process for me took 8 months. I took an entire semester off of school. I missed an entire semester of school, missed an entire summer, and then I went back. So is it a good idea? For me, it was the best decision for me, and I want to talk a little bit about why. So I would say that there's really three main reasons why I decided to just enlist before doing ROTC and then contracting or then commissioning as an officer. There's three reasons. The first reason is I wanted to get that time in service right away, right? So if you guys know the whole story about me deciding to join the Army Reserves, you know that literally as soon as I found out that Army Reserves was an actual thing and that you could do this whole one weekend thing or whatever, I have a funny story. I actually thought that it was 1 week a month, not 1 weekend a month. And I still enlisted thinking that I was going to have to take an entire week off every single month. So that's kind of a funny story of how ignorant I was and how much I did not know about, the Army in general. But, I enlisted into the reserves. I wanted to do that as early as possible, as soon as I found out, because time in service, right? So if I were to wait to actually join the military until I actually commissioned, which is right now, then I would have had essentially wasted those 3 years, because one of my biggest regrets is not joining the Army Reserves before college. I did 3 whole entire years of college before enlisting into the Army. One of my biggest regrets is not just enlisting before actual college. So I really wish I would have done that. So number one, I didn't want to wait any longer, but those 3 years from the time I enlisted to right now, whenever I commissioned as an officer, my time in service on all of my paperwork and stuff is dated back to 3 years ago. So my 20 years is up in 17 more years. But let's say I didn't enlist in the reserves, I didn't go that whole route, from right now it would be 20 years instead of 17 years. So there's this whole retirement thing being, if you are straight out of high school and you know that you want to be an officer, you know that you're certain that you want to join the military, you're certain that you want to be an officer, then I think it's a good idea for you to enlist in the Army Reserves or the National Guard, enroll in ROTC, go through that whole process, because those 4 years that you're going to be in college, maybe even 5 years, but those 4 years that you're going to be in college, those 4 years are going to be accumulated time in service, and that's going to help you, because then when you graduate, you're going to have essentially 16 more years until you can retire, and not the whole 20 years after you retire. So that's going to be, in my opinion, a real big benefit to joining. That's one of the reasons that I joined before I did ROTC. The other reason that I decided to join before ROTC was the financial benefits of actually having military before going to college, right? So it's also one of those reasons I wish I would have done the military before college period, because I wouldn't have had to take out as many student loans as I did, right? Because college, it's not free. My family cannot afford to pay for me to go to college, so I got some of the federal grants and stuff that you don't have to pay back, but I still had to get additional, government loans and things like that on top of that. So, enlisting in the military before ROTC, before college in general, even if you do reserves or National Guard, you're going to be able to get that GI Bill, and it's going to help. If you're reserves or Guard, it's not going to be like mind-blowing. It's not going to pay for your entire school. But for me, it was about $600 a month, which was great. $600 a month for the GI Bill really helped out a lot. And then when you contract in the reserves, or when you contract in ROTC, you're also going to get an ROTC stipend, and I've talked about it before in my ROTC video. So the financial benefits are definitely there for joining the military before actually doing ROTC. And the final real major reason why I decided to enlist before going the whole officer route is because of the little bit of respect that a lot of, quote unquote Mustangs or whatever, people who are enlisted before becoming an officer, whenever you're an officer, a lot of enlisted soldiers look at you like you can't really relate to what they're going through. And I didn't spend a whole ton of time as an enlisted soldier, but because I do have that time, I knew, and from what other people have told me, a lot of times officers that used to be prior enlisted are looked at a little bit differently. The enlisted soldiers feel like they can relate to them a little bit more, and that was 100% a conscious decision, a conscious thing that I thought about. It was one of the driving forces. Like I personally, I wanted that enlisted experience before becoming an officer. I have been told certain things. My grandfather was a big influence on me, and he thought it was really cool, being a Mustang, which a Mustang is essentially a term for somebody who was enlisted before becoming an officer. I just mentioned that, but I just wanted to be real clear about that. So that was really, I would say, the third major reason. I just wanted that enlisted experience that I could relate with my enlisted soldiers before I become an officer. Now I'm going to talk about two real quick minor reasons. One of them is a positive, one of them is a negative. One positive that's kind of a minor reason of doing enlisted, going reserves, going National Guard before doing ROTC is you're going to have a little bit of experience, right? You're going to have that military experience. You're going to go to ROTC. Some of the stuff you've learned before, it's going to be a little bit easier, as well as whenever you actually go through the accessions process to be commissioned as an officer, whenever they pick your branch, it gives you a couple extra points, like literally I think 3 points or something like that, if you are prior enlisted. So that's definitely going to help you a little bit if you actually want to go the whole active duty route, because it's really competitive. The negative reason, the real negative thing that people are scared of, they don't really want to do this whole enlisting thing before doing ROTC, before going the whole officer route, is literally just the time it takes. Like me, I had to take an entire semester off school. I lost an entire summer, right? So those 8 months or so that I was gone, I missed those 8 months. I could have just enrolled in ROTC that next semester, not miss school and all of that. But a lot of people are like, man, I don't know if I want to spend all that time, because it's not going to matter in a few different areas, right? Because you're just going to be an officer, the same deal. So that's one negative, as well as basic training is just going to be difficult. It's not obviously the most difficult thing in the world. I've talked about that before, but it's just something that it's not super pleasing. Like, if you don't have to go to basic training, it's kind of like, why would you go to basic training if you're going to be an officer? Kind of like, why would you do this if you don't have to do it, kind of thing. So that's really the two, in my opinion, negatives that people don't want to do this whole enlisting in the reserves, enlisting in the National Guard before doing ROTC. So in my overall opinion, I think it is a more beneficial, or it is a good thing to enlist before doing ROTC, but it really just comes down to you. It just comes down to how much you weigh that time. Again, I was gone for 8 months. I missed the summer, I missed a semester of school. That was a big time, right? So I missed all of that time. So it kind of just depends on how much you weigh that personally in your life and all of that. That is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. That would be awesome. If you want to stick around some more videos, hit the subscribe button. That would be even better. If you guys are not following me on Instagram and Snapchat, the links are right here. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you later.